Dunville, Georgia. Georgia's first physician-founded, fully integrated medical cannabis provider will now dispense its products at independent licensed pharmacies throughout the state. The inclusion of pharmacies as authorized providers of medical cannabis alongside Botanical Sciences owned dispensaries expands the avenues for patients to access healing science of cannabis medicine. Georgia is the first state in the country to authorize the dispensing of medical cannabis through pharmacies to registered patients, allowing Botanical Sciences to bring relief to more patients in need than ever before. Emanating from our roots in medicine, our unwavering mission has been to provide hope and relief to registered patients in Georgia. Between our 5 owned dispensaries and nearly 120 exclusive independent pharmacy partners, close to 90% of the state's population will be within 30 minutes of access to Botanical Sciences medical cannabis, says Gary Long, CEO of Botanical Sciences. We're proud to lead the way in Georgia and serve as a model for our country, leveraging the trust and professionalism of pharmacists to provide equitable access to registered patients. Over the past year, Botanical Sciences has been working closely with the Georgia Board of Pharmacy, the Georgia Pharmacy Association, and the Academy of Independent Pharmacy to operationalize this pioneering approach. Through the strategic expansion, patients who have received a recommendation from their physician and obtained their medical cannabis card will have more access than ever before to obtain the medicine they need. Patients can view a full list of participating independent pharmacies and locations nearby at their website just by putting in a zip code. Now, you guys, there's a lot of hot controversy about accessibility when it comes to this plant. And at the end of the day, I believe everybody should have access. Georgia has a very interesting program, though, when it comes to medical. I really like that people who are going to pharmacies are going to be able to have access right there in front of a pharmacist. I think that that's exciting. It's also got its downsides, but I'm interested to hear what you all think about it. This is Carmen Sacramento coming at you live for High at 9 News.
I mean, yeah, I guess this is like kind of cool, Mandy, but at the same time, there's not going to be any like fire tree in the pharmacy. You know what I mean?
No, of course not.
Yeah. So it's like,
are old school pharmacists going to try to push people away from weed, right? That go to try to buy the weed?
I think they're going to try to just push them towards like Marinol and other stuff. Since
Right.
they're like, hey, we ran out of what you want from this provider, but we do have Marinol. We can get you a prescription for that.
Yo, if you
today.
tried this extra strength Tylenol, bro, I hear it's the jam.
Yeah. I
I
feel like
have a good friend in Decatur, and that I've been, friends with for the last about decade or so. And so I've been kind of following the progress over in Georgia for some time. Georgia doesn't have flour, as far as I know. What their system has is a access to extracts and concentrates, and I'm pretty sure last time I checked, they were not very good. I don't know if that's changed at this point. I don't know if the pharmacy being involved has done anything for quality levels or where they're sourcing things. I have no idea about those things. I know that Georgia still has a long way to go. I cautiously share Mandy's optimism. I like to see, it being more integrated into our society. I don't like it to be under the pause and control of the FDA and things like that. So, but that's a whole nother discussion and another story that I'm sure we'll cover one day.
For me, it's more about accessibility, right? We have truly medically fragile people in this country who need to have access to this plant, and Georgia's opening some kind of a pathway.
Yes.
Supposedly.
I wish.
Let's see how hard it is for everybody to get these medical recommendations.
I wish Dr. Felicia was hopped in the chat and has something to say, because she actually is in Georgia, and I know that she has has talked about this in the past in regards, and I know that she's happy for it, that there is some form of advancement in Georgia, which I think is great too. I'm just not sure if this is necessarily the right type of advancement. Just very nervous. Very nervous. Can't trust him. Cannot trust him. This is like
trust
him. Shit about weed.
It's the first thing. Well, I mean, I'm just saying, Dale, with The word on the streets in DC is that it's moving to Schedule 3, and then this is just a very, very easy transition in regards to that. And so I'm just like very, very skeptical of when the pharmacy industry steps in and starts dealing in the cannabis space. That's all. Just, you know what I mean? Just hypervigilance, I guess.
Fine line, though, right? I mean, it's such a fine line.
It's, I mean, fine
Well,
line.
if
It's
if we use the
transparent.
analogy that the pharmacy is the evil empire in Star Wars, right? So then the pharmacy would be like the Death Star coming over the cannabis industry.
No, no, no. See, I see the pharmacy as more like the saloon where everyone was hanging out at. You know what I mean? Because the Death Star is actually the pharmaceutical companies, but then they're just using that as their distribution method to get everybody into you know what I'm saying, into the party.
I just find it pathetic. We've got to continue to try to put a nice spin on baby steps to bring shit that the average person thinks is just unbelievably stupid. Why are we having to worry about this? Fucking plant grows in your backyard. People have been smoking it for thousands of years. What is all this about? You got to have a pharmacist do this now? Holy shit.
And they didn't even change
At
the
least they
spelling,
got
Dale.
access. Okay, let's be happy with that. They got access.
Dale, they didn't even change the spelling with this. They didn't even make them a FARM assist.
Yeah. Well, it goes back to the derivation of the word drug, which was dried plant in Dutch. And we are so far from what a drug used to be to what it is today. It's just absolutely ridiculous. This is not a drug like you go to a pharmacist and they hand you a bottle of pills. It's just not. It's more nuanced than that. It's a whole plant product with terpenes and flavonoids. It's like these guys, they can hand you a bottle and say, here's your Vicodin, okay? They can't explain to you why something that would have an aroma that would make you feel a certain way or other parts of the plant that get you to feel in certain ways. They don't give a shit about that. Here's your plant, walk out the door, don't fucking ask me questions. It's just ridiculous, but it's a step forward. More
In the
access.
spirit of MSG being on the show, I'm gonna go ahead and say, like, let's step back for a moment and say, like, the cannabis plant has been around and therapeutically used for thousands of years. Our country is what, like a few hundred years old. Okay, so we come over into this country and we start pointing at plants and saying outlawed, 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 which is about as ridiculous as like pointing at a bird in the sky and saying outlawed and pointing at a tree and saying it's outlawed. Like, these are creations that were put here by the creator and have been here long before us. For us to have this audacity is crazy.
It's really a big self-entitlement thing, isn't it, Luke?
It's a control trip. It's all about class hierarchy and stratifying the current class hierarchy. Look up the Council of Nicaea, the Emperor Constantine hijacking Christianity, which was an entheogenic mushroom cult, and the fact that we're using consciousness suppression and sexual suppression in order to try to continue the class stratification and basically keep the world in a medieval peasant lord situation. You know, that's really the why for why is cannabis is still illegal.
Yes.
Hell yeah, brother Luke and Dale.
I go back to Hypatia and Cyril in Egypt and what they did to her because she was a female that was insightful, and Christianity they cut her into pieces and burned her on a pyre. Witch hunts are the same thing.
Yep.
We can follow this along, and you know, Matthew, you've done probably more study on this than I have, but I was always curious in undergrad and even since then, just how brutal, you know, religion has been to try to suppress what people want to do just to be fucking happy. You know, leave them the fuck alone.
And just real quick, if I love that you touched on that, MSG, about the Constantine and the council. If you haven't read that part of history, please do. Super interesting. It'll tell you about Christianity and how we arrived at what we have today with it. That the council there was basically decided what Christianity was going to look like for the next millennia.
And the craziest thing, so the original bishops of the Christian church used psychedelic mushrooms, and the biblical stories were actually encoded stories that talked about the use of the mushrooms in states that could be reached. Then what you had was what they called churches without the living water, where churches where they took the doctrine literally without the psychedelics, and You can't find on the Wikipedia page, but more historical digging, if you go to college libraries, what you can find is that the only bishops invited to the Council of Nicaea were the bishops without the living water. So these were the bishops that hadn't done psychedelics, that could still be bribed or could be threatened, and were still enthralled to their ego. And so they didn't let any of the weirdo psychedelic heads into the meeting where they decided how this thing was going to be. And then the next thing they did was 500 years of de-indigenization of European tribes. They took away the tattoo, they took away the dreadlock, the drums, knowledge of curanderismo in Europe, and they basically made a de-indigenized police force. And like any good corporation, once they got it perfected in Europe, they began to scale it up worldwide.
Mm-hmm.
But they didn't win.
Thank you, Charlemagne, for bringing all the tribes in. Your choice is join us or we kill you.
Straight up.
And the papal bull that Columbus took with him to the New World: convert him or kill him, enslave him.
Yep.
Convert them or kill them.
I didn't learn this till I got into undergrad, and I went, "Holy!" Why
Well-
wasn't I taught this? Well,
Well, on that, we got to keep this train rolling because we have some big news.